So, did Trump's trade war make America stronger or just more expensive? That's the million-dollar question. His aggressive tariffs on China and the renegotiation of NAFTA into the USMCA certainly shook up global trade, forcing conversations about fair competition, manufacturing jobs, and economic independence. Some industries benefited, especially those in auto manufacturing and steel production, while others, like farmers, retailers, and tech companies, felt the sting of higher costs and supply chain disruptions. The trade war with China didn't eliminate the trade deficit, and while the USMCA made some key improvements for American workers, it also strained US-Canada relations. Now, as Trump teases a potential return to the White House in 2024, the big question remains: will we see round 2 of his trade battles, or has the world moved on? One thing is certain: Trump's trade policies left a lasting mark on the global economy, and whether you see them as a bold stand or a costly gamble, their impact will be debated for years to come. Imagine waking up to find the price of your favorite smartphone, car, or even groceries has suddenly skyrocketed, all because of a trade war. That's exactly what happened during former President Donald Trump's bold and controversial trade battles, particularly with China and Canada. His administration's approach to trade was unlike anything seen in modern U.S. history, driven by the belief that America had been getting the short end of the stick in global trade deals. With China, Trump launched an all-out trade war, imposing massive tariffs to counter what he called unfair trade practices, intellectual property theft, and a growing trade deficit. Meanwhile, with Canada, he aggressively scrapped NAFTA and renegotiated it into the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, claiming it would protect American workers and industries. But did these strategies strengthen the U.S. economy or cause more harm than good? Let's break down the impact of Trump's trade tactics and whether they truly reshaped global commerce or just created more economic chaos. Former President Donald Trump's trade policies were some of the most controversial and impactful economic moves in recent history. His strategies, particularly concerning China and Canada, were aimed at reshaping the global trade landscape and reinforcing the America First economic agenda. Trump argued that the U.S. had been taken advantage of in international trade deals, and he sought to renegotiate or impose tariffs to level the playing field. With China, his administration engaged in a full-scale trade war, slapping billions in tariffs on Chinese goods, citing unfair trade practices, intellectual property theft, and a massive trade imbalance. With Canada, Trump took a more aggressive stance on revising the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, which he claimed was outdated and harmful to U.S. manufacturing jobs. The result was the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, a renegotiated deal aimed at benefiting American workers. But did these strategies work? And what were the consequences for the U.S. economy? The goal was to pressure China into changing its trade policies, including its state subsidies for domestic industries and its handling of intellectual property rights. The Phase 1 trade deal, signed in early 2020, was meant to ease tensions, requiring China to purchase $200 billion worth of additional American goods over 2 years. However, the deal's impact was disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and many analysts argue that it failed to fundamentally change China's trade behavior. The trade war had mixed results. While it brought some manufacturing back to the U.S., it also led to higher costs for American businesses and consumers, as companies faced increased prices on goods imported from China. Additionally, China diversified its supply chain, seeking alternative markets for agriculture and technology imports, reducing its reliance on U.S. trade. Trump's approach to Canada was different, but still aggressive. He viewed NAFTA as a bad deal, arguing that it led to job losses in U.S. manufacturing, particularly in the auto industry. His administration pushed for the renegotiation that resulted in the USMCA, which introduced stricter labor requirements, increased U.S. access to Canada's dairy market, and changes to automotive manufacturing rules. The new deal was seen as an improvement for American workers, but it also strained U.S.-Canada relations, with tensions rising during negotiations. One of the most dramatic moments was when Trump imposed tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, citing national security concerns, a move that was widely criticized by both American and Canadian business leaders. Canada retaliated with its own tariffs, leading to a temporary trade dispute between two of the closest allies and trading partners. Another key aspect of Trump's trade strategies with China and Canada was the impact on American businesses, farmers, and consumers. While Trump's administration insisted that tariffs would help bring jobs back to the U.S., the reality was more complicated. Many American companies, especially those dependent on Chinese imports, faced higher production costs due to tariffs. For example, industries like electronics, automotive, and manufacturing saw increased prices for raw materials and components. This forced some businesses to either absorb the higher costs, pass them on to consumers, or relocate production elsewhere, often to countries like Vietnam or Mexico instead of the U.S. The tariffs also sparked retaliatory measures from China, which hit American farmers particularly hard. China was one of the largest importers of U.S. soybeans, pork, and other agricultural products. But when the trade war escalated, China shifted its purchases to other countries like Brazil and Argentina, leaving American farmers struggling. To compensate, the Trump administration introduced billions of dollars in subsidies for farmers. But these were temporary relief measures rather than long-term solutions. For Canada, Trump's trade approach sent shockwaves through industries that had relied on NAFTA's stability for decades.